Hey guys, subscribe for daily content. And if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got a very interesting knife review / knife overview to share with you guys. This is the new Kunwu S Tao II. This particular one in DLC. Everything is DLC coded on this particular one. So, real quick, thanks to Kunwu for sending it in. Thanks to my patrons for supporting me. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex and on TikTok at the_metal_complex. Depending on when you're watching this video, it might be available in a few different configurations. I'll link it. If it's not there, don't worry. It'll come back in stock at some point. But it does help my channel when you use those links, so but that's entirely up to you is what I usually say. So I'm rushing that because this knife is an absolute upgrade to the first S Tao or sheep's foot Tao. I'm going to go over in great detail how they're different, but I need people to understand that. I also want people to know that the price of this guy right now is $279. Right, this is Vanax titanium. I reviewed this knife and absolutely loved it. It was on both my favorite knives of all time playlist, and it was also on my most recommended. Absolutely, I found that to be an excellent value. It is amazing how upgraded this is over this one. This is like comparing a modern day video game to like Super Mario Bros. Not that bad, but it's nuts, man. This is wild. So the reason I'm telling you guys this is, number one, I want people to understand that this knife was always right around $270, $280, right? That's currently what it is. This guy is more expensive, and I heard a couple of people say, oh, it's a shame that Kunwu is creeping up in their prices like everyone else. This is not the same knife. It's insane how much they packed onto this for what they want for it. Furthermore, the base price of this knife, which is not DLC coded, it's just all of the upgrades but not DLC and everything else is the same, is actually pretty darn close to the price of this one. So if you hear people say that, what that means is I didn't look and I'm just reacting to the price tag and then I'm walking off to chase a butterfly. That's what that means. They didn't look into it at all. I did, so I'm going to share all of that information with you. Let's go ahead real quick before we talk about this one here. Let's go ahead and get some quick specs so that you guys know exactly what you're looking at. The overall length of the S Tao II is coming in at 8 1/4 inches. Blade length is coming in at 3 1/2 inches. Cutting edge is 3 1/8. How about some size comparisons? Any custom scales you find in this section can be found down in the description under Original Goat and Others. Up against the 8010 and the 8020.5. It's a pretty big knife. It's not as gargantuan as something like the 8010, but I think because of the height and it kind of looks stumpy, so people I think assumed that this was going to be a sub 8-inch knife, and it's not. It's pretty big, right? Not cumbersome big, it's just bigger than people might expect. Definitely bigger than knives like the 8020.5. How about up against the Spyderco PM2 and the Spyderco Para 3? There we go. And then finally, let's put it up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue. Sorry, these are all packed away at the moment. And the Hogue Deca. All right. The last one we're going to do is up against the original S Tao, which is the sheep's foot version of the Tao, which I think a lot of people are remembering the original price tag of the Tao, which was not Vanax. That's a huge factor. Vanax, I always tell people, like, don't lean too much into the price of materials, but there are definitely some materials that are super expensive. Vanax is very expensive. Very, very expensive. So the original Tao was an LMAX, substantially less expensive than Vanax. The S Tao, when it released, I believe, base steel was Vanax, and it was much more expensive, but because of that element. So if you're remembering a lower price tag, it was probably for the original Tao. But comparing it directly with the knife it was based on, you can see here they, I believe, increased the length and the height of the blade. They also changed the fact that the scales are, I mean, like the ergonomic lines are relatively similar. It's much less angular, much softer at the edges, and it's also contoured. That's a huge deal. It costs way less money to mill a flat piece of titanium than it does to contour and shape titanium like this, right? The pocket clips between these two are different. The new pocket clip is wonderful. This one also has now a milled tie option. Both of them come with both pocket clips, to my knowledge. So that's definitely a difference. Both of them just have standoffs, right? The blade geometry on both is great, and you have a satin option on the new one as well. But the old one did not have a DLC option at all. Both of them have Timascus pivot collars. This one is Timascus on both sides. The one that I have is one of the original. It's just Timascus on one side, not on both. Maybe newer versions of it before they upgraded it to this. Maybe they had it on both sides. I'm not really sure, right? So there's a lot. There's a lot of extra there, especially when we're comparing the price tag of specifically the DLC version to the base version of this. So just to be clear, if you are remembering the most if you're cooking up the most extreme comparison in your head, it would be the base Tao in LMAX, which was $200 to $220, something like that, right? And the most extreme version of this, which comes in at, I think, $369. That's, I think, why people are cooking up a very dramatic comparison. And that's unfair, because you're not at all comparing like what this was an upgrade to, and you're not comparing all of the different levels or what's going into all of the, like the pricing and stuff. DLC is expensive when it's real. This isn't just a black coating. It's not the same thing, of course, that you see at the gas station where there's like a knife that has a black blade. This is a DLC coating. It is unbelievably scratch resistant. You guys have actually seen me on the channel take steel bits and try to scratch the blade on this, and it doesn't, because DLC is the real deal. It also adds additional corrosion resistance. And in the past, all we had was the chalky stuff, like what Spyderco did, and that kind of slowed you down while you were cutting. This satin DLC does not do that. So you get the benefits, all of the benefits, none of the drawbacks, and it looks amazing. They also did that to the frame, the hardware, the pocket clip. That's a lot, right? So what I'm saying is that this is substantially more justified in terms of price than I think some people are giving it credit for. Let's go ahead and do carry profile, because I got a lot that I want to say about this. This is Kunwu's coolest knife, for sure. Thickness, up against the Spyderco Para 3, it's not nearly as thick as you might think. Definitely. And any excess, you're getting it in the form of contouring. So it's absolutely justified. Length and height up against the PM2 and the Para 3. You can see here it's really not that much more cumbersome than the PM2 in terms of its dimensions. It is definitely heavier, though, because the base PM2, of course, is in G10. And it's pretty tall, but I have thoroughly enjoyed carrying it. Let's weigh it. That's definitely something that people are going to want to know. The weight difference between the two. Sorry, I was trying to find my scale. So this new guy here, which is, again, titanium and Vanax, hardened to 60 to 62, by the way, which is excellent. This is milled out for weight reduction. This guy comes in at 5.3 ounces, which is pretty heavy, right? It's not insane, but it's definitely, there are plenty of people who would list that as heavy. The original S Tao comes in quite a bit lighter at 4.2 ounces. If you're a stickler for weight, right, this might be an extra ounce, which doesn't sound like much, right? But when you're going from 4.2 to 5.2, that can be a deal breaker for some people. Not the majority, but for some people. So it's worth noting there, definitely. For the amount of blade that you're getting between the two, that is a crazy difference in weight. In fact, to be perfectly honest, the original S Tao technically has slightly more blade. They are, I think I said that the new one was longer, but the truth is I think they're almost exactly the same. Let's take a look. Original S Tao is 8 inches. S Tao II is 8 and an eighth. So it is an eighth of an inch longer with slightly less cutting edge, right? So just wanted to be fair there and let you guys know the legitimate differences. But let's go ahead and do a hardware check. I'm going to get out my tools. The tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the section of my description that talks about the tools I use on this channel. I'm pretty sure that this is T8 across the board. We have a T8 pivot. We have, well, that's T6, but you're never going to take the lock bar insert screw out. The pocket clip screw is a T8, and the body screws are T8, 2 on each side, one for the clip position on the other side. That's fantastic. Minimal hardware, extremely easy to disassemble and put back together. As long as you have the right tools for the job, you should be good to go. How about blade stock thickness? And we'll compare. Blade stock thickness of the new guy is 126 or so thousandths. Blade stock thickness of the old guy is coming in at maybe slightly less, 124. Is that actually the case, or did I grab it the wrong spot? Let's do it right here. 120, yeah, 124. So it's slightly thinner. Okay. Does this feel right? I mean, yeah, it's a different shape, right? Does it feel any different? Yes. This almost feels like it was made by a different company. Kunwu has always had great quality, and this is really good. Like, you can still buy this knife, and it's really, really good. I have always enjoyed the flipping action of it, right? The front flipping action has been good. Access to that little hole there is just fine. There's no double clutch. You can even forward flick it. Every one of those movements that I just did, super easy. It is absolutely better on this guy. Access to the lock bar is essentially the same experience. The pivot action itself is better, whether that's an upgrade to the pivot area, more attention to the pivot area, or just the fact that the blade is heavier, probably all three. I have no idea, but the action definitely feels better there. The flipper tab, pulling that flipper tab and deploying it definitely feels better. It feels a lot more natural. It feels like my finger knows exactly what it's doing. This one is a little bit, I'm like, oh, is it this? Oh, okay. Oh, the detent I didn't get that. I'm going to flip it again. You know, the detent doesn't feel absolutely perfectly tuned in comparison. Back when I first handled this, I was like, yeah, it's great. But then comparing it with this, I'm like, whoa, this is better. Like, definitely. The front flipping action, I would say it's maybe about the same. Access here is definitely better. This whole area is so much more opened up. They easily could have done that on this, and they just gave us this little, like, trapezoid, right? This area, way better. It's also, like, fully scalped like it is on the other one. So doing your reverse flick, super easy. I mean, we're talking Spyderco levels of easy here. In fact, if you want to do the cool Spidey drop, right, you can do that. This is great. I wish, the one thing that I wish is that they had dropped this slightly lower. You can still get in there. They scalped it out on each side, but I wish it was just slightly lower, right? When everything else is perfect, something that is slightly not perfect sticks out. It's not bad, it's just not perfect. Everything else feels great, right? The detent is absolutely perfect for the combination of all of these things. It feels superior. This was designed by somebody who cares, 100%. I am a huge fan of that. I consider it an upgrade in every way to the standard S Tao. Let's see here. Did I just like skip over? That was like the action segment of it, right? Yeah. So we did like weight, we did blade stock and all of that. So on the subject of ergonomics, which one's better? This one. By a long shot. And it's kind of that, like, the S Tao feels great. It's got really comfortable ergonomics, right? It's got a nice little choke up spot there. It's flat, and there's a kind of a ledge right here. And it's nice. Like, they did some nice texturing and things like that. Like, it's good. It wasn't like a hand melting thing. This is legitimately hand melting. And it's not just the fact that it's contoured or knocked down at the edges, right? Which it is. It's beautiful. Love the texturing. They call this honeydew. They've got a couple of different, texturing options if you want. Like, they have the orange peel, and that there's another one like a raindrop or whatever. This is beautiful. It actually offers traction. Like, there's actual traction there while being really, really smooth. And I think it's because you have like this surface flatness. The texturing doesn't poke up. It's inside, like they cut into this surface smoothness. So it's not grippy unless you squeeze it, like just touching it, right? Like something like this. This is just grippy. This is smooth until you need it to be grippy because you are pushing your flesh into those indentions. Kind of a gross way to say that, but You guys understand what I'm saying? It's nice. It actually works really well. You have a great choke up spot. It's not actually a choil. It's just flat right here, but plenty comfortable. And you're way behind the edge. It's actually a little bit, you have a decent amount of room. I'm not going to say it's better or worse than the other one, but both the standard grip and the choked up grip are substantially more comfortable thanks to the contouring, the texturing, the edges being knocked down, and the pocket clip being a massive upgrade from both the standard wire clip and their original clip that they did. Well, I can't actually show you what's to the right, but I was going to show a pocket clip, but I can't show it. But the pocket clip on this one is an upgrade to the milled clip that Kunwu normally does on their knives. So edges definitely knocked down. This head is widened out, knocked down a bit. The clip itself is contoured, has a nice ramp underneath. It's exactly the right length, well below the 50% line, so it doesn't stick into your hand and bother you. It's also really cool that they gave us the Timascus pivot colors on both sides. Love it or hate it, Timascus is expensive, even in a small piece like this. Now, should they offer a basic pivot color that's silver or black and not Timascus and charge slightly less? Yes, because not everybody likes the Timascus accents. I do, so it's not a problem for me. But if you don't, I get it. If that's a complaint, I think that's a valid one. The sheep's foot blade. Not everybody likes a sheep's foot blade. I do, because it works really well for what I like to use a knife for. I do a lot of shaping and draw cuts. I cut into packages. This is ideal for that. You still have a tip, and to the credit of people saying I wish they had a drop point version, it's not like a drop point tip. You're definitely losing some puncture power, right? This is the S Tao II, meaning this is the sheep's foot Tao II. What they need to do is bring the base Tao up to the same level. So just the Tao II. And I would prefer that they didn't do it in LMAX. I would prefer they did it exactly like this, but with a drop point blade. I think that would be great. You get this and a drop point blade, and oof, that's a real winner there for a lot of people. But the sheep's foot version is great for me. Straight edge, super easy to sharpen. Not going to be like the best at, slicing versus a blade that has more belly. Like if you had the exact same blade geometry, but it had belly, it's not going to slice quite as well, but does it slice? Oh my goodness, yes. Woo! No problem. That is ready to go like butter. Oh my goodness, it is so slicey. I love Vanax. It's not going to win awards for edge retention. It's not like a Rex 121. It's nowhere near that, right? But it's got great edge retention. It's got great toughness, and it basically can't rust. I mean, I don't know how long you'd have to leave it in the ocean, but Vanax is insano in terms of corrosion resistance. Add to that the DLC coating, and you really have something that can't rust. All of the hardware is DLC. I mean, this knife is essentially going to shrug off anything that could cause corrosion in all but the most extreme environments. I love that because you can use this knife, and at the end of the day, you can just toss it in the drawer and forget about it until you're ready to use it again, which is fair enough. That's what most of us do. But I have other knives that I carry and use that I kind of have to baby, right? Like this is in 3V, this Demco 80 20.5. And I love this knife, but I definitely am like, oh, I got some sweat on it. Oh, I got some salsa on it. Don't put salsa on your 3V blades. But like, I don't have to worry with something like this. You just cut stuff and whatever. You wipe it off when you feel like it, not right away because you're worried it's going to patina or rust or whatever. And if you get water on it, who cares? I mean, that's really, really cool. I love how their satin DLC looks. This is not a mirrored DLC. A lot of people get confused about satin DLC or shiny DLC, mirror DLC. This is nowhere near a mirror. It's essentially a satin finish with a DLC applied to it. There's shinier versions, like what Kaiser does, which is a near mirror on like their Milita. Really, really cool. And then there's actual mirror. If you want to know what that looks like, Kunwu does it. Or at least they've teased it on their Instagram. Go take a look at one of their pinned videos on Kunwu's Instagram. They have sheep's foot blades that are both actually mirror polished, and one of them is DLC. That's like Rockstead level mirror polishing. That's what a true mirror looks like. So this is just a satin DLC, but still expensive to do and very, very nice to look at. A substantial upgrade over this plain chalky DLC that we saw from like Spyderco. This has great jimping. I have to say it's one of the only areas where they feel about the same. It's not worse than the original towel. I just wish that it extended a little more, right? That's just me, and it's because you really can get right up here. I want the jimping to be right out here, right behind the swedge, but that's just me. Outside of that, I think the blade is like absolutely perfect. Kunwu doing what they usually do, which is to leave the blade alone in terms of billboarding. Thank you. This is why people like companies like Kunwu, right? Their identifying features they're just there. Like everybody knows, oh, that's a Kunwu. We don't need to see brands and logos and crap all over the blade. We don't need to see it, right? And they used to put S Tao right there. And I said, you don't need to do that, right? So they didn't. It literally just says Vanax, right? We just know now. We've come to appreciate the aesthetic of Kunwu knives for their aesthetic and not for the words printed all over the blade. So we know what they look like. Once you see them, you kind of know, or you recognize the pivot, right? They have their logo on their pocket clip, which I think is pretty classy, and it's small. And it's something that doesn't create an eyesore. It doesn't get in the way of the rest of the knife. I love this. This looks so clean, so nice. Huge fan of that. I really wish that they had done a backspacer. I think that would have been really cool and an opportunity for some additional contrast, like if they wanted to do a Timascus option, or even like I don't know why we don't see this more often, but like a polished DLC to contrast with the more matte frame and match up with the blade, right? Now that would cost more money. That's definitely how they're saving. So Kunwu's doing what they usually do. They're trying to provide some of the most amazing features while keeping the price reasonable. So adding a backspacer would definitely add to the cost. So I can kind of understand why they didn't do it. There's no lanyard hole, and who cares? Pocket clip, like I said, mountable for left and right hand carry, but you can also get a left-handed frame lock. So if you are left-handed and prefer to carry the knife in your right-handed pocket, you can do that, right? With a right-handed frame lock. Or you can get, if you're right-handed and you prefer to carry your knife in your left-handed pocket and manipulate it with your left hand, you can get a left-handed version, right? Or for whatever reason, you can flip it around. Whatever you want to do. I actually confused myself talking about that. So if you lost track of it too, well, we're in the same boat. But that's neat that they do that. You have a stop pin located in its semi-traditional spot with actually a little tiny bit of shouldering. There's a little indentation right there, which is nice. Runs on bearings, obviously, no blade play, up, down, left to right, no lock stick, no pivot lash, unbelievably smooth and consistent in here. Perfect detent, absolutely perfect centering. $369 for this heavily upgraded full DLC version, or $319 for the exact same knife but no DLC coating. When you are actually comparing it to the base price of the original S Tao, which was $269. I think originally it was $269. They bumped it to $279. Who cares? The $10 increase over however many years, I'm not going to cry about that. This is a completely and totally justified price tag for this version. But if we were really comparing apples to apples, I would have just the plain non-DLC one. So really, we're comparing the base prices here. $279 for the base version of this, or $319 for the fully overhauled S Tao II. Is that a justified increase for the upgrades? Absolutely. It is an option for you to pick up the DLC version. This isn't the only version that you get. This is if you want the DLC version and want to pay more money. Obviously, the DLC version is going to cost more, especially when they did the whole knife and put Timascus on both sides. Like, yeah, that's going to cost that much, right? So the base price of $319 for this is more than worth it. More than worth it. I can see it's so they have such a perfect roadmap of how they arrived at that price tag, right? It's so easy to say, it's this plus this plus this plus this over the original, which did not have it. It's so easy to see it. They didn't pull that price tag out of their butt. I think that's a completely justified price tag. $319 is great. I think $369 for the DLC version is great. This knife is unbelievably recommendable for people shopping at this price point. Obviously, it's still a lot of money for a pocket knife. You do not need to spend that much money to get a good knife. You can spend $50 and get a good knife. This is definitely catering to more of the enthusiast and collector crowd who still like to use their stuff. So if you consider yourself a part of that crowd and you're used to buying knives at this territory, this is worth every penny. Extremely recommendable. It's going to go in my most recommended knives. It's also going to go in my favorite knives of all time because it is absolutely one of my favorite knives of all time. I'm going to keep this. I'm going to carry it. I absolutely love this knife. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex and on TikTok at _metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. If you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.